Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to our webinar participants from around the globe. Thank you for joining us today, and welcome to the third and final webinar in our Job Search Bootcamp series. I'm Kate Warren here at DevX, and today I'm going to be helping you put together an effective cover letter. Before we get started, I just want to make sure that everyone can hear me, do a quick sound check. If you could type in yes into the chat box, and we'll just see if people are able to hear. Awesome, great. Thank you all for responding so quickly. So we've talked about CVs and your job search strategy, and while your CV really is the most important document to your job search and the thing that most recruiters actually read first, a compelling cover letter can be what really convinces an employer that you are a good fit for the job and ensure you make it to that interview shortlist. So once your CV has caught the attention of a recruiter, they will look to your cover letter to get a better idea of what you are like as a person, your ambitions and interests, and whether or not you'd be a good fit for their organization. So today's webinar, we are going to talk about what you should include in your cover letter, how to structure your message, maybe more importantly, what not to include, and just give you some pointers on making sure you're making the most of your cover letter. I will leave plenty of time for Q&A after the presentation. You can enter questions anytime during the chat using the chat box on the bottom left-hand corner of the Ready Talk window. So feel free to submit those at any time. We'll be keeping track of them and try to get to as many as time allows. If you have any technical problems during the webinar, you can send a message through the chat box to our tech support, and my colleagues will be able to assist you. And we are recording today's webinar, so if you aren't able to join for the whole thing, we are able to send you a recording next week so you can watch it again. Great, so we will go ahead and get started. So a question that I often hear is, like, do cover letters really matter? Do people read them? Should I actually submit them? Should I take the time to write them? And the answer is a little harder to come by because for some recruiters, it is really, really important. The cover letters really matter to them. And for some, they really don't. It really doesn't matter at all. The problem is when you are applying to a job, you don't know if that recruiter or that hiring manager is one of the people that really wants to read that cover letter or that doesn't really care. So if you really want that job, I really recommend you just assuming that they are somebody who will really want that cover letter, just to make sure that you aren't missing out on any opportunities. But as I mentioned before, I think sometimes the name cover letter people often think of, and I think back when you used to submit hard copies of your resume and cover letters, the cover letter would actually be the cover page of your resume, and often think of it as this is your introduction, and the recruiter might read that cover letter first and then look at the resume. And I think that when you think of it that way, it makes people feel like they need to fit everything from their resume into a cover letter, when in reality it's actually the opposite. Recruiters will look at your CV or resume first, and if they like what they see there, then they will turn to your cover letter. So rather than it being your opening document, it's really more of your closing document. So what do recruiters look for? And by recruiters also, I'm including hiring managers, because oftentimes recruiters are more focused on some of the really hard skills that might be in your CV, and sometimes it's the hiring managers that really do like to read the cover letters, and typically they are past both when they are reviewing candidates. So both recruiters and hiring managers are really looking at, first and foremost, how you communicate, how you express yourself in written form. And your CV is kind of a more of a jolted way of describing your experience as a kind of a normal writing style. So a lot of it is just making sure that you are an effective communicator. If the job requires specific language competencies and you're writing it in that language, they might also be evaluating for your written fluency in that language. So if, for example, you are submitting a cover letter in a language that is your second language, you want to really be focusing on making sure that you proofread that and maybe have a second set of eyes on it, because they will be evaluating your language skills. They're also really looking to understand your motivations for the job and the employer. Why do you want to work for them? Why do you want this job? Your resume is really more a list of what you've done and what you do. This is really a chance for you to say, why is it that you want this job and this employer?